Blast me to Electia! It's time for the Mad Merlins Warhammer 40,000 Imperium Journey. Issues 52 and 53, Part 3, Paint Guide. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Mad Merlins Warhammer 40,000 Imperium Journey. And as you might have guessed, the yeses did indeed win. And I am bringing to you this special painting tutorial on how I'm going to paint the Triarch Stalker for my Sautekh Dynasty collection. As you can see, I've got the Triarch Stalker in 3 sub-assemblies. We've got the main legs. We've got the pilot seat in Sled Belcher, and the gun in Chaos Black, just like the legs. I've gone for the heat ray on this version, especially for those of you who watched my build video, you would have known that already. I thought it'd be a pretty cool one to go alongside my Gauze Blasters on my other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this guy up to battle ready. Then I'll take it a little bit further, as it's a nice centerpiece model, and I'll show you how to paint it up to a bit of a parade level with some nice extra highlights. So, first thing I'm going to do, before we get anywhere, is to put a single layer of Corvus Black all over this, ready for the first paint, which will be Caliban Green. So, right, there we go. That's the layer of Corvus Black down on the cockpit, just to help cover up those areas when we come to apply green. So, speaking of green, we'll move on to that just now. So, this is the colour we'll be using, Caliban Green, and we're going to be painting this pretty much all over the body and any other armour panels that will need to be green. So we'll give the paint a good shake. And we're going to want quite a lot, so we're going to apply it with a large base brush. So we'll gather some of the paint onto my wet palette here. Touch of water to help thin it down. A little bit more than that. And then onto the Stalker itself. So we're going to paint this over pretty much, like I said, everywhere. You do want to try and avoid these larger orbs. These are going to stay black. So we'll paint this over the legs, leg joints, the claws, and the main body. It should go over black quite easily, but if you do see any of the black undercoat showing through, just give it a second coat once the first has dried. So there we have the green all finished on the Triarch Stalker. As you can see, I have gone over the ball joints there, but they can easily be repainted in the next step. And next step is to block in all the black detail. And the black colour we're going to use is Corvus Black. This is a nice smoky black. And with a grey shade over top, it will give us a nice coloration to our black areas. So we're going to use a medium layer brush to apply this, as we're going to be focusing on quite a few small areas. I'll get some on my palette, thin it down with just a touch of water. And the areas we're going to apply this to are these ball joints here. And any areas where there are ribbed cables, so we got one on each of the legs dangling down here. There are quite a few of those on the cockpit as well. Just take your time and work your way around your model. Don't worry about working it into the recesses too much, those are going to be white later on. Alright, with the Corvus black drying, we can move on to the next colour. And we're going to be using the Crag Blue. This is just for the giant orb on the control console, as well as a few of the lights at the front of the cockpit. So I'll shake our paint up. Again, we'll use the medium layer as these details are fairly small. Gather some of the paint onto my palette even. Thin it down, just a touch of water. And like I said, we're going to paint this over the control orb here. Making sure we get both the underside and the top side. There you go, like so. And then on the front, we've got just this little light here to paint. Like so. May need to go back and do a second layer, as the green is pretty powerful against the blue. But it's starting to look good. And there we have the control console all picked out. As you can see, I've done a couple of the other smaller buttons as well, just to help break it up. So next up, we've got to pick up and tidy up all the silver details, and for that we're going back to Lead Belcher, which was used as the spray. So again, I'll shake the paint up. Turn the palette around so we can see. And we'll stick again to the medium layer brush, as there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of small details that we're going to need to start picking out. Also, don't forget to change your water after you've finished the silver, as we don't want to contaminate our other colours with any metallic flakes. So on the actual Triarch cockpit itself, we've got to tidy up all these areas on the pilot that we've got green on. We've got the areas on the spine. Just along there. And we've also got all these nodes and sensors on the front. Just work your way around, pick them all out with lead belcher. Moving on to the gun, we've got this back area here, plus the clip around the energy cables and the actual barrel of the gun itself. And then details on the Stalker include the ball joints on the claws, the insides of the claws themselves. We've got some little areas to pick out with silver. Then we've got what I like to call the tail. I'm going to pick that all out with lead belcher. You might need a couple of layers going over the black. But just let the first one dry and then go back in with a second later on. And I've got a fly in here. The other areas on the legs I forgot to mention to colour are these little bits on top of the legs just here. Just use the side of your brush so we can avoid getting any silver on the green. Yeah. But it's just a matter of taking your time. If you've got your box, check your box. If not, I am using my spare phone and checking the Games Workshop website, as well as downloaded versions of the images that I can zoom in on. I'm definitely have to put another coat on the back end here. But the Walker is really starting to come together. With all those colours picked out, we can now give the model an all-over shade. And what I've got here is a mix of Basilicanum Grey and Contrast Medium. So it's 1 part Basilicanum Grey to 2 parts Contrast Medium. And this will dull down all the colours and unify them a bit as well. So for this stage, we're going to use a medium shade brush. You might want a larger brush to help apply the shade to the legs of this Triarch Stalker, but this will do for the gun and the pilot itself. So we'll get a good puddle of our contrast mix on the palette. I'm going to brush a little bit of a clean off, just so we got a bit more control at how much is on our brush. And then we'll bring in the pilot here, and so we're going to apply this liberally all over. So this will cover the silver, the black, the blue and that green, and we'll darken it down enough so that when we put our other colours on later on, they will stand out a bit better. And again on the gun, we're just going to give this a liberal coating all over. So the silver, the black and the green here is going to get a lovely coating of that Basilicanum Grey and Contrast Medium mix. And it will flow into the recesses, shading them, as well as settling on top, just to help darken those colours down. So when we bring in the highlights, those highlights will pop just all that bit more. And then finally on our Stalker, we're going to do the same thing again, liberally coating it all over. It'd be a good idea to paint 1/2 at a time, just so you've got something dry for your hands to hold on to. One thing you want to make sure you are doing when you're painting the model is, if you see the paint collecting too much in one place, just soak it up with your brush and move it along to a fresh area. We don't want to clog up too much of that detail, but we still want to make sure that it pops. With our wash fully dried now, as you can see, has really brought out all those details and also dialed those colours back a little bit. Perfect for the Sautekh Dynasty. There's our Stalker itself. Looking really good. So moving on, we've got the next colour, which is Retributor Armor. So this is going to be picking out a lot of the gold details. So that includes any glyphs, but for the majority of it, it will be on the Triarch pilot himself. So as usual, give our paint a good shake. For the pilot, we'll use our medium layer, but for the smaller details, we might want a small layer, so we got that on standby. So we'll just get some of this paint onto our palette. Put it down some water. And then we can bring in our pilot. So the areas we're going to be painting are these bits here, as well as the whole of his torso. And including the backpack here. Just paint Liberator Gold over all of these areas. We got the symbol on his chest to pick out. Just use the side of your brush so we can pick out that raised detail. And we've also got the symbol on the front of the Stalker here. Like so. And if we look on the legs, the front limbs here, we've got these symbols just on the inside of this recess panel here. And you want to do the same as you did to the front, just lightly drag our brush across those raised surfaces. You might want to switch to your small layer for this, but I'm managing to do it pretty well with the medium layer here. Oh, and you see, this is why switching brushes or even switching angles would have been a good idea to do. But don't worry, we can sort that out. Just need to cover over those areas with a little bit of the original colours. Don't worry, mistakes will happen when painting. That's why we always paint, as it's a good way to improve our skills at it. Just take your time picking out all these gold details. Again, if you're ever unsure which areas need to be gold, take a look at the box, the magazine, or even the website images. Now that the gold is dry and the tidy up stages have been complete, we can move on to our next colour, which is a wash of white and flesh shade, and this is going just over those gold details. So as most of these details are fairly small, we will stick to the medium layer brush. So let's get a small puddle of white and flesh shade on our palette. Make sure we ain't got too much on. And we can start applying it to our Triarch. So all over his torso. Any gold details that we've already painted as well. So you got the one at the front here. Shade all over it, because when it dries you won't notice much of a difference on the green, but it will help the gold to pop. And again, on the back of the heat ray, you've got these gold icons. Just give a light coating with light and flesh shade. And again, you can just go over the whole of the panel. It won't show up too much on the black, but it will help that gold to pop. And then again, we got the gold details here to do. Just make sure we got everywhere. There. So leave that to dry, and then after that, we've just got 3 stages left to do. Okay, with our wash drying on the gold, we can move on to our other areas. So next we're going to be using Clorox White, and this is for 2 reasons. One, we're going to be painting all the areas that will be glowing green, and we've also got a couple of areas that will be white on the Triarch, and finally we have the orange orbs on the heat ray itself. So we're going to use this colour to help set up for that. So we'll make pile on our palette like so, get a touch of water and thin it down. Luckily for me, this Clorox White's pretty thinned already, so it goes on quite well. We'll give our brush a quick rinse and a clean, just so we can control how much paint we've got on our brush. So we'll start on the gun. And first off, we've got these energy orbs on the ends of these nodes. Just want to pick these out with the Clorox White. We've also got this energy area in here that will be green, so we'll paint that with Clorox White. And also on the gun, we've got the energy orbs for the heat ray. There. There's one on each of these. So on the Triarch himself, we've got his head to do, as well as the orbs up here and down here. So we've got the head do the whole of this front faceplate, because we've got his eyes that'll need to be white as well, and the orb on his forehead there. You will want to do a couple of layers, especially over the darker colours. But I've had pretty good luck with Clorox White. With just the one layer. And on the Triarch base, we've got the large orbs in the centre, and then the smaller orbs on top of each of its legs. I'll paint the inside areas of these white, leaving lead belcher or Caliban green on the outsides. Finally, with the white, we want to swap over to our small layer brush, because we now need to run this into the recess gaps on all these ball joints here. So pick a starting point, got a little too much on the brush, and then just gently run it in. Doesn't matter if you get a little bit over the black, as this will help add to the glowing effect that we're going to apply later. Oops. There we go. Just wipe that away. Do these on all the legs on the Stalker. Then we're ready to move on to our next step. With our white dry, we're ready to start moving on to our next colour. And this is going to be Troll Slayer Orange, and that's going to be just on the gun. So we'll use a small layer brush for this, as it is smallest of small details. So we'll get a bit of paint on my palette, thin it down, just a touch of water, a little bit more paint I think there. And then onto the gun. As I said, we just want to focus it onto the gun itself, and it's these orbs on these panels just here. And I put a little bit of Clorox White in the very barrel, so we can put a little bit of a orange glow just inside there. There, that was good. Before we want to come back and do another layer of orange, just to make sure it is at its brightest. There we go, 2 layers of orange. We've got a nice bright glow there for our heat ray. So our final colour then is to go over all the other white areas with our Tesseract Glow. And again, we'll go with our small layer brush as we've got quite fine detail to do. This paint is fine straight out of the pot. You don't need to thin it down or anything. Just going to gather good puddle on our palette, give our brush a wash. And we're ready to start applying it to our Stalker. So we got the large central orb here. Just want to give that a coat of Tesseract Glow. Like that. Then you want to do all the insides on our ball joints here. Just gently run it in, wipe away any excess quickly. Like so. And of course we've got these small power nodes on each of the limbs. So I'll paint those. Then on the Stalker, we got these front facing lenses. We've got the one on his forehead, the one above him, and if we make sure we've got a very fine point and not a lot on, we can run a little bit of the green just into his eyes there to make it look like they are glowing as well. There, quite nice. So just do that, going around all the different areas on your model, and then we'll take a look at our finished battle ready components. And here we have our finished Stalker. All our paints drying. As we can see, that looks a lot better than what we started with, especially all those glow effects. There. So next up, we're going to take this guy to the next level. So we'll start with a few layerings, then we'll go into some dry brushings, some final edge highlightings, and then we'll be able to put our model together. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do to get this guy parade ready is to add a couple more washes to areas we've already painted. First, we're going to take our previous Basilicanum Grey mix, and we're going to thin it down with a couple of drops of water. I'm going to apply this to his face. I'm going to use a medium layer brush for this, just to make it a little bit easier to control. So I'll get a good solid brushful of the paint, and then 2 brushfuls of water just to thin it down. And then just going to put this as a thin layer over his face, making sure it goes into all the recesses, especially around the mouth and around his orb on his forehead there. Next we're going to take Reikland Flesh Shade and we're going to apply this to all the orange areas. So use this straight from the pot, just making sure we get puddle on our palette so we can control it better. And onto the gun we're going to put the Reikland Flesh Shade over all the orange detail here. Just to give a little bit more definition. And we'll run a little bit into the barrel itself as well. There we go. Okay, now we're going to start doing some layering. We're going to start working on the metallics. So first off we're going to take Ironbreaker and we're going to put that all over the silver on the Triarch. We'll just focus this on the pilot himself, as all our other areas will be picked up later on with a dry brush. So just get a small puddle of the Ironbreaker, thin it down with a touch of water. Again, we're using the medium layer brush for added control here. And then onto the pilot, we're going to paint this over the arms, avoiding the joints. Just running the side of our brush over the fingers so we can leave the silicone and grey in the recesses. And we'll pick out a few of the raised details on his backpack, just the upper areas where the light would catch. And the back of the head as well. Next we're going to take Liberator Gold, and this is going to go over all the gold detail, again just picking out the higher areas. Do a bit more of a shake. That's better. We won't need too much water in this, just a single brush should do, as Liberator Gold's a fairly thin paint. But we're going to paint this all over the flat panels, trying to leave the Reikland Flesh Shade in the recesses. And making sure we ain't got too much on, we can just pick out the symbol on his chest. As well as the one on the front here. So there we have Liberator Gold all applied. And the final metallic colour we're going to use is Stormhouse Silver, and that's going to be used in two ways. First we're going to do an edge highlight on the armour on the Triarch. Then we're going to dry brush this over the other metal areas on the model. So we'll get ourselves our small layer brush for this, for the first part. So we'll get a small amount on our palette. Get our brush to a nice point. Then we're going to run this along the sharpest edges of our Triarch armor. There we are. And we're going to pick out just the edges on his arms and hands. Again, just skimming over the fingers of the side of our brush, just to pick out that raised detail. And the second method we're going to do is to dry brush this. So we're going to get some of the silver onto our brush. And on a spare piece of tissue, we're going to work the pigment into our bristles. I'm using an old starter brush here, but any fairly small rounded brush will work just fine. And then we're going to pick out details here on the spines, just running our brush along it, and as you can see, it's picking up on the sharpest edges there, giving a nice highlight. Now if we bring in the legs of our stalker here, we can do the same on the gold detail, just gently drag a brush along and the silver will get picked up. Like so. Now we've got this back piece here we can do a dry brush on. Just flicking our brush backwards and forwards like so. Yeah. There you see, we got the bright silver now picked up on those edges, really making them stand out. And finally, we'll dry brush the end of the gun here with the raised areas. Right, with clean water, we're ready to move on to highlighting some of the other areas. So first we're going to start with Warpstone Glow, and this we're going to dry brush over all our dark green areas. So give our paint a good shake. And I've got a large old brush here, perfect for dry brushing. Just get some on the bristles and work it in. And make sure we get off as much as we can. Then I'll bring in the limbs here. And you want to gently brush this backwards and forwards so it picks up on those edges. There we go, look at that. And for the cockpit area, we'll do the same. Just making sure that dry brush picks up on all the sharpest edges. Trying to avoid all the areas we've already painted. There we go, we can see that green is really picking out all those edges there, whilst leaving the main body nice and dark. If you feel it looks a little too bright, you can always knock it back with a thin wash of our silicone and grey mix. But I think that looks really good. Oops. With all that dry brushing done, the Stalker is really starting to come together. While we've got Warpstone Glow out, the next thing we want to do is start highlighting all the energy cables on the Stalker. So the main one we've got, I'll show you on, is these two on the gun here. So we'll just want Warpstone Glow on our palette, and we'll thin it down quite a lot. So it goes on really thin, and we're going to build it up in quite a few layers. So what we want to do is start at one end, just a little ways from the end, draw all the way to the middle. Then on this side, do the same again, draw towards the middle so that we leave most of the colour at this halfway point here. As you can see, the first layer is dry and it's still fairly translucent, but we're going to go over with a second layer. This time we're going to start a little further back than we did before, but we're going in that same direction, pulling the paint towards the center, building up that strong color. Just in the middle there. With the Warpstone Glow now dried, we've got a good strong transition from dark to light green there. And we're going to take it up another notch. This time we're going to use Moot Green, and we're going to use it the same way again. We're going to lightly dry brush this time the uppermost edges of all the legs and the cockpit. And then we're going to give a final glaze layer on all those energy pipes. So we'll get our dry brush again. Working the Moot Green into the bristles. Making sure that there's very little left. And like I said, this is just going to be an extreme dry brush on the top corners here, where the light is going to catch most. And again on the cockpit, again we'll focus it mainly to the upper areas here. And all the sharpest edges. And again, just like with our Warpstone Glow, we're going to take some of the Moot Green onto our palette, thin it down quite a lot with some water. Give that brush a quick clean there. And then we're going to apply this on the centermost areas where the light of the energy would be strongest. Just like that. Okay, our Triarch Stalker is almost done and we're on the home stretch now. We just have a couple of extra colours left to do. The first off is we're going to use Cowgirl Blue, and this is for the energy orb and the lights on the control panel. Let's turn my palette around to a fresher side. Okay, thin some Cowgirl Blue down on our palette. And then I'm going to pick out those blue buttons. Like so. And then the control orb. Focusing it more along the top. I don't want to build up a couple of layers, as Cowgirl Blue is a fairly transparent colour. And don't forget our light at the front here. There we go. If you've accidentally got any blue where you didn't want it, just touch up your previous colours. I think I'm going to have to run a little bit of blue into the black into the recesses of my control orb there, but that's it for the Cowgirl Blue. Next up, we're going to take Eshin Grey. And this is going to get dry brushed over all our black areas. So we're going to use a fairly small brush for this, as it's quite thin areas we've got to cover. We're mainly looking at all the details on the gun and the black cables on the main body. So just going to dry brush this over all the raised details on the black. There we go, that's looking pretty good. And as I said, the other areas we got are all these ribbed cables on the walker's legs. Just gently brush over and you'll pick up all those raised details with the ash and grey. And we can also do a little bit on these orbs here. Okay, we've just got the last two colours to do, and the first of these is Agrax Earthshade. And we're going to do a nice burning effect on the muzzle of the weapon, much like how we did the energy blades, but this time it's going to be a simpler method. We don't have to water anything down. So we're just going to take some of the Agrax Earthshade, create a pool on our palette, and then on our gun, going to apply this in a way that we bring most of the colour towards the tip. So I'll start at the back of the barrel and work our way down. Leave it to dry. And you want to do another 2 to 3 layers on top of that, just to help really build up that effect. And our absolute final colour to use is to go back to Clorox White, and this we're just going to do a spot highlight on all those different orbs, so the blue, the green and the orange. So we use our small layer brush for this. Get a small amount on the palette, just a tiny touch of water, and we're going to dot all these orbs just on the top corners here. Like so. I'll even paint a little circle just in there. Then we got our control orbs, so I just want to paint a small dot where the light will be catching the most. On the blue we'll do a thin line just here, like that. And we can finally edge highlight just around his faceplate. Helping all that raised detail just stand out a little bit more. There we go. All what's left to do now is glue it together and we can have a look at the final gallery. And here we have the finished Triarch Stalker in the Sautekh Dynasty colours, painted up to a good centrepiece, parade ready level. All that's left for me to do is go back and do a final touch up, I think, with some optional edge highlighting that I want to do on the sharpest corners with some Warpstone Glow, and then give it a varnish of Storm Shield. I may even at a very later date give it a nice detailed scenic base just to help it identify what counts as being a base contact for missions at a very later date. Like I said, I'm in no rush to do that. Vehicles like this are often measured to and from the hull, so as long as models can reach that, it's fine. But I think a base would really make this pop as a centerpiece model for the Necron collection. Let me know what you thought of this paint guide in the video description below. I know it's a pretty long video, but I'm sure it will be very interesting for those of you who have made it all the way through. If you have made it all the way through and you think I deserve it, please give this video a like. Leave a comment down below saying what you liked, what you didn't like, and what you'd like to see perhaps in the future for paint videos. Otherwise, that's all there is for me to say. So this is the end of 52 and 53. Well, not 53. 53 will have a battle report coming up on Friday. But this is the end of the 52, 53 build and paint guide. I've been Merlin. This has been the Imperium Journey. I'd like to thank you all again for watching. And don't forget, there's all my links in the description down below as usual. And I will see you all in the next one for more mad content. Goodbye.